All
Live.
right. We are back again with another Jewcast. Myself, my co-host Alan Roberts. Today we have a very special guest, rock star lawyer, DC insider Will Chamberlain. Welcome to the show.
Good to be with you. DC insider is a bit of a stretch. I live in North Carolina. I wouldn't call myself a DC insider, but we'll take it.
The world is such this that you could be living on the North Pole, but with the connections you have, you're still an insider in that place, man.
That's true. That's true.
First question right off the bat. People are talking about UK and France and Canada declaring that Palestine is a nation. What are your thoughts on that moving forward, Will? Do you think it will happen? What are the effects? What do you think of that, Will?
And I think it's primarily for domestic political consumption. You got to realize the first thing that happens in all these countries, right, is they've imported a substantial Islamic population. And all the leaders are like either centrist or center left. So they all think of that Muslim population as part of their base. So that Muslim population is ticked off about Gaza. Like it's a defining issue number one. Honestly, if you look at the UK, they actually have this now. There's a breakaway party from the Labour faction that's like the new independent faction. They already pulled an existing Labour person. They're polling at about the same level as Labour is. And it's like the Jeremy Corbyn Islamist party, and it includes some of the people who ran in like these deep Muslim areas whose platform was basically stand with Gaza, and they're running as UK parliamentarians. So that's what we're dealing with, and I think if you saw there's a Israeli minister, Amichai Chikli, I think is how you pronounce his name. I met him actually in Israel. Smart guy, really cool. But he tweeted out, he's like, yeah, we don't care what you guys, you're doing this for domestic political consumption because you're trying to keep Islamic votes, but we don't care. So, because nothing's going to happen.
What do you think about, the trend has always been whatever horrible political trend pops up in the UK, we start to see it in the US. What's that, Alan?
You're definitely a little like frozen.
You're blurry, but you're still alive on the stream, Alan. Whatever pops up in the UK.
I'm very sorry, guys. If I freeze, I live in the country, and Starlink is being crazy today.
So. Got it. All good. We see you. The attempt to crack down on free speech, many other things in the UK, and then it came to America. Do you think that this trend is going to affect the Democrat Party? We're already seeing it with Zoran Mamdani. Like, how do you think this is going to play out with the U.S.? Smaller Muslim population, but the way the left is going, do you think it'll affect the Democrats the way it's affecting these parties in these other countries?
Oh yeah, I mean the Democrats' time as a Zionist party, if you will, is coming to it, and if it isn't already at an end, I think this is Muslim immigration in the United States is not that substantial. The Muslim population here isn't that large, but it's large enough to start being a relevant faction in the party. And it's also joined with a broader aggressive left. You see, I think somebody made an interesting point. I saw an interview today Ryan Grodusky did with some Politico in New York, but they basically assessed that because so many working class voters have left the Democrat Party is losing its moderate faction. And as a result, you're getting an increased dominance of the hard left faction, which has always been hostile to Israel. So the combination of some amount of increased Muslim migration, making it a more relevant political faction on the left, combined with the fact that the center, the gravity of the party, the base of the party is shifting hard to the DSA types. That's going to lead to, the Democrats becoming more and more anti-Zionist. I don't think Zionism has much of a future at all, the Democrat Party.
Do you think that left-wing Jews, we're seeing it with people like Bill Ackman shifting over, but as far as a larger voting trend, do you think that these liberal Jewish communities in America are going to start realizing that the Democrats are not their friends and shifting to the right, or will they go along as the party becomes explicitly anti-Jew?
I mean, my understanding is that the Reform Jewish community isn't really replacing itself. That what's happening with Reform Jews, which is kind of the source of, the Reform Jewish communities in New York and Los Angeles, they're not replacing themselves. Their children are not staying within the tribe. Their children are turning atheists. Their children and their children have a deeper commitment to the political left than they do to the project of Israel. So I think that the end result here is both that the sort of historic kind of older traditional liberal Reform Jews are just it's an archaic political phenomenon that is kind of in a very archaic boomer political phenomenon that's not going to replicate itself and not going to sustain itself going forward. You're basically going to have, I think, to the extent, I think the American Jewish communities are going to be more and more right wing as time goes on. And I don't necessarily think that's a product of too many people changing their minds. Some will get the picture, but it's more that just whoever sticks around as Jewish in the United States will end up finding their natural home on the right.
I think so too. I think that it's been going in that direction for a long time. Something you were discussing, there's not a large population relative to the entire United States of Muslims in the country, but it's there and it's growing. Do you think that the trend, we saw Mahmoud Khalil was getting deported. Now he's not getting deported. Do you think that there will be an increase in deportations of people with names like Rumeza Ozturk and Mahmoud Khalil, or even the denaturalization of the Somali community, which everybody that takes a hard look at it realizes they're not a good fit for America? Do you think that the mass deportations will tick up amongst the Muslims?
So I think even if those deportations are currently on hold of people like Khalil and Ozturk, those deportations are going to go forward. I think I've looked at the law. The Trump administration's on the right side of the law, especially with regard to Khalil. Ozturk might be a slightly closer question, but even so, I think the courts are ultimately going to conclude that, if the Secretary of State makes a determination that your presence here is not in the benefit of the United States and hurts our foreign policy, you're gone. I think that's the way our law is written. I think the courts are ultimately going to agree, and there's plenty of years left to resolve these things in the courts. As to the wholesale denaturalization of the Somalis, I don't think that's going to happen, even though I really don't see a reason why we need to have any Somalis in the United States. I really don't. I think that Somali immigration should be brought to a complete halt, just zero visas, and essentially the Somali community encouraged to head home. But I don't think that's going to. There's a lot of problems with like a formal mass denaturalization. I don't think that would be lawful.
That's the trick of it. It's tough to make any type of legal argument for it, except to say that there's a broad sweeping change we need to keep America the way that everybody enjoyed it in the 90s. And we've had massive changes in this country throughout the generation. Slavery was once legal and now it's not. Women once couldn't vote and now they can. And I think mass denaturalization of communities that have proven themselves hostile to America, I think it's an idea that needs to get pushed a little more. Do you think if there was some type of broad change in America's future, that this is something that's possible, or you just couldn't see any future where this happens?
I can't see denaturalization being done en masse. I think it would require like a constitutional amendment.
Yeah.
I don't think this is something you could just do by statute. You've granted somebody naturalization. There are already a process for denaturalization for like enumerated reasons, like you do something within the 10-year period post that indicates hostility to the United States personally, but it just doesn't fit the Anglo tradition of law. So I don't see anything like that happening. I think what I do see happening, and the Somali community isn't big, right? It's really big in Minneapolis, but it's in one place, it's in one town. It's like 100,000 people, something like that in America, roughly. That's the right size. It doesn't need to, or not the right size, but that's enough. That's sufficient. Like we don't need any more Somalis.
I guess I will never visit Minneapolis, Minnesota. I could just strike that off the list of places for the rest of my life.
I don't really see the reason to go. There's nothing going on there.
Alan, I saw you wanted to jump in for a second there.
Well, do you feel that because I believe in 100% deportation, but denaturalization, should that not pretty much, if you mentioned the 10-year rule thing, but we have a lot of people that are over here on green cards, visas, and such things. If every second they join a protest, we should be removing these people, and we should be doing it extremely public. I think
I'm of the view. Yeah, I agree. If you're on a green card and you're out here protesting on behalf of a designated terrorist organization, like you're out here chanting from the river to the sea, like you can go home. You don't need to be here anymore. You're not.
Right, exactly.
And, we should be looking hard at people who are recently granted naturalization who then are attending these protests, right? Like, and the question then is, did you take the oath of naturalization in good faith? Because, I was thinking about this. I read the oath of naturalization. I looked at a guy like Mehdi Hassan, who became a naturalized American citizen, I think by marrying an American citizen. And I don't see on what basis you could say that he took that oath in good faith. He's not loyal to the United States of America. He's not, you're supposed to have juror loyalties to foreign potentates when you naturalize. He hasn't done that. I don't think he hates the country. He really does. Like it's really transparently obvious from the way the guy talks. He doesn't like the country. He's extremely hostile to the country's foreign policy. Wants to flip on a dime the moment he became a citizen. Like,
well, I think that there should also be a condition to give up your statehood in the place you leave. Like, I don't like. I'm all for legal immigration, but I just think we need to start taking a very serious look at even that process, because very honestly, we're using that process to basically bring in the top end people, and that's not, that basically spurns the motivation of a lot of Americans. Like, we should push our people to be top end,
Yeah.
But beyond that, like, I think America could go through quite a long period of time where we did zero immigration at all, and just to get our shit straight, basically,
I think a good policy to aim for is net zero. Right, you sort of where you say like we're not going to completely zero it out, but we're gonna try, especially and I think the correct amount of Muslim immigration is zero. I think that just period. I think that's the correct amount of Muslim immigration. I don't think that there's. I think the costs outweigh the benefits of Muslim immigration to the United States.
Speaking of specifically denaturalizing somebody, especially when they're hostile to the country, this guy Zoran Mamdani, I believe he had to sign that he was not a member of the Communist Party when he became a citizen. I think those laws are still on the books. Tell me if I'm wrong. Do you think that he specifically should be denaturalized, or is it a bad political move? Oh, we're going after our enemies. The old adage, like, don't use power, they'll use it on us, even though every time they get power, they use it on us. Do you think he should be denaturalized and deported?
Yeah, I think he should be denaturalized and deported. I don't think he's loyal to the country either. I think he only became a citizen 5 years ago, and he's running for mayor of New York. What? Like that's crazy. You just showed up. Like you are. He had his marriages in Uganda under with armed guards with AKs, and he's telling Americans we can't have AR-15s. Like what? Go leave, you asshole. Yeah, I don't like Mamdani. I don't think he's another example of someone who I don't feel took the oath in good faith. And you can point to very specific things. And I think that's the way you have to look at it. Like, I mean, we could say to ourselves, like, we have this guy who supposedly took an oath, and we can look at his social media postings and prove that the oath was taken in bad faith. You go home.
All the money that we found USAID spending on crazy things, I shudder to think what Zoran Mamdani would do with the budget of New York City if he had full access to it. He got that piggy bank. I can't even imagine the things that he would do with New York City's money and the things that would go on. It's crazy to me to think that New York City could become the next London, some lawless place where the second class is the natives, the Americans, especially whites. That's one thing I think people are starting to understand that they did not understand, especially on the left. It's like these people aren't just anti-Zionist. They hate the West. They hate America. They hate white people. Like, do you think people are finally realizing in America, like, these people are not our friends. They hate everybody over here. They hate the nation.
Not yet. I mean, maybe the sort of right-wing pro-Israel types have that handle on that, but I think there's a lot of people who don't really get that, right? There's all this talk of, these weird white-brown alliances, especially like the people who are hostile to Jews in Israel are like, aha, we've got the Muslim-Christian alliance against the Jews. I'm like, bro, even taking you at, setting aside the question of whether you're normatively, being ethical, right? Like, so let's just set aside the question of the actual underlying cause you're pursuing. these people are not your friend. They will turn the moment that you solve the problem that you're trying to solve. They will turn on you, and if they have the power sufficient, they'll wipe you out. Like it's absurd, and they're deeply. I think one of the things I tweeted about a few days ago was the idea that left politics and Muslim politics around the world should seem like they should be in tension, because the Muslim politics also contains a deep vein of social conservatism to it, right? Muslims are not liberals in that sense at all. But both Muslim politics and left politics are rooted in this deep resentment of Western culture. And so they're able to kind of like put aside their differences and work together politically to achieve their common goal until they're in power. This is literally the story of the Iranian Revolution, right? It was like the useful idiot left, along with Islamists, overthrew the Shah, which Jimmy Carter thought was too mean. And then we got the Islamic Republic, which has been a nightmare for human rights too, and for the leftists who they killed, like just after they were done with them. Like it's a very, very bad idea. And I think,
well, aren't these areas of the world places where with women and minorities decades ago had more rights than they have now? Like, I mean, you see all the pictures of women in Saudi Arabia from the 1960s and 70s. They're wearing dresses and they're driving cars and shit like that. And now they're basically indentured servants. But yet America
was better. So is the UAE, right? Like you're actually seeing some modernization finally. But yes, especially in Iran. Iran went completely backwards. Like Iran was much more modern and liberal in the sense that we would approve of in the 70s prior to Khomeini. And the policy that led to the end of the Shah was radically, the idea that Carter was such a terrible president for so many different reasons, but one of the many things he did, which was really silly, was play footsie with the Islamists and say that the Shah was being too mean. That was really stupid and really not good for American interests.
Right.
Something we were talking about, this undermining of the right in America by these people pushing Islamism. It's being done by the dissident right. These people, a lot of them are supporting Zoran Mamdani. And I feel like this is the future. Like the fight for the future of America is right now on the right. There are people pushing for integrating as you put it, the Muslim Christian alliance, trying to bring that into power, into the right, into fashion. All they're doing really is helping the left. And they're undermining President Trump. There was a debate last night, Alex Jones debating everybody's favorite 5'7" Mexican, Nick Fuentes, who was arguing that we should stop supporting President Trump, which is just, it's incredible to me. The last 5 decades of American history, and in my lifetime especially, there's been no greater champion for America than President Trump. And these dissident right characters are trying to undermine the one guy standing for America, for American nationalism against globalism, and all they could ever do, which is why CNN is now sharing this guy, MSNBC is now sharing this guy, because he undermines the right. He doesn't build the right. Do you see it the same way I see that this right here, this fight within the right, for which I see as winners versus losers. It's total losers that spend their time hating on Jews all day. Like, do you see this the same way, that it's like the fight for America's future is within the right, with the so-called dissidents trying to undermine American nationalists to the benefit of Islamists and communists on the left?
So, there's different parts of the dissident right, if you will. There's plenty of dissidents who I would classify as more indifferent to Israel. Right, they're people who are not like necessarily pro-Israel, but they don't vibe with like the aggressive hostility to it. They think it's kind of silly. And then there's the group of dissidents who are like deeply obsessed with Israel. And the commonality there, and I hate to say it this way, most of them are brown. Like real talk, like Sneeko, Myron Gaines, Amru Foodle. Like, what is it? Is it really news that a guy of like Arab descent in the United States is hostile to Israel? And he's a base rightist? Yeah, okay, right, Like it's the same thing. It's basically just the same phenomena. So it's not. And moreover, I don't think I honestly don't think these reflect an authentic reflection of modern American views. I don't. I think you have one thing I think to keep in mind, and this is especially in the world of social media, there's two dynamics at play that make anti-Zionist narratives seem more popular within the United States than they are. The first is the fact that there are 2 billion Muslims in the world and 20 million Jews. So you start there, you realize that, like, just in terms of who's going to get more likes, who's going to get more engagement, given that that's the new metric of everything, anti-Zionist narratives will, right? Like, if even 3% of the Muslim community is rabidly anti-Zionist to the point of like being very engaged, you're just going to overwhelm, in terms of numbers of social media likes alone. So that's dynamic number one. Number two is I really do think there is, in addition to that, a motivated effort by foreign actors. I don't even know if they're state actors, but foreign actors to try and essentially psyop American influencers into thinking that anti-Zionist politics is attractive to their audience, especially right-wing thinkers. Because if I were trying to manipulate public opinion in the United States, I wouldn't do it by buying an influencer. That's not how to do it. I'd use a bot farm and I'd like all the influencers' tweets that say what I like, that say things that push the narrative that I want pushed. I would like those incessantly, because I know, even just from personal experience, but also having watched this happen to a lot of people, you sort of let yourself push, your content gets steered in the way that gets you more engagement. And it's not even like an intentional thing necessarily. You just feel better when you get more engagement. So you steer your takes in the direction that gets you more and more engagement, even if that engagement's inauthentic. So two competing dynamics.
They are also monetarily rewarded for it too. Like that,
yeah,
the way the system's set up, they're also monetarily rewarded.
Twitter, X, YouTube, you get more cash if you're saying the thing that gets more engagement drawn to you. So the combination of those two dynamics, right? The world, whereas in the United States there's still substantially more Jews than Muslims. There's a lot more Muslims in the world than there are Jews, and there's also foreign interests, I believe, pretty strongly trying to like create these using bots to inauthentically prop up people. And prop up particular messaging. Those two things mean it's just I think you've seen a lot of influence kind of get steered in this direction, but I don't think whenever you do polls of the United States public more broadly, and especially the United States Republican Party, like Republicans are pro-Israel. Even young Republicans who are a little more skeptical are still pro-Israel, or at least certainly not anti-Israel, certainly not pro-Hamas.
It's just such a brilliant point. That the foreign funding, they don't even need to go grab somebody, tell them what to say. They do it through audience capture. The audience is going bananas. Oh, we love it when you say this about Israel or this about the Jews. And so they just keep going bananas. I think that phenomenon has taken a hold of certain people and just grabbed them and twisted their minds. I'm thinking specifically Jake Shields, maybe Stu Peters, although I think
this is my explanation of Candace. Remember, Candace was a pro-Israel influencer.
Yeah,
I think maybe it's combined with having a bad experience with the Daily Wire.
Yeah,
it's the same concept though. It's the ability to control the narrative, which has been the sad history of America for at least the last 20 years. The more they spew to us that these are the people you listen to. Like, think about why you listen to your doctor. Like they're always telling you to trust your doctor. If you actually take a back step and look at the healthcare industry, there's absolutely no reason to trust these people, like at all. Like they're financially incentivized when you are sick. They are funded mostly by big food and big pharma, people that have basically a very serious interest in you consuming more of their products. And when you look at the totality of it, we're not even trying to get help. There's 371,000 deaths from medical error a year too. Where it's like that's higher than the average of COVID. So, but we are told so much to trust your doctor, trust your doctor, trust your doctor. Any concept of not trusting your doctor was met with very serious backlash, especially in times like 2020. And I believe that was all basically pushed also too. Like they very clearly knew what their message was on social media, mainstream media, everything like that. They were not allowing people to talk negatively about the vaccines, COVID, Fauci, the masks, anything like that. Everything had to be met with, if you didn't think it was super dangerous, that it was pushed. And I believe that that's exactly what you were talking about, where they use it to craft the narrative of what is acceptable and unacceptable on social media, what our social climate is, our social score is basically, and then they basically can guide the content wherever. And like Jake Shields, people like that, Candace is a perfect example. The algorithm can catch them, and they, especially if they are easily manipulated by the views and the likes and the clicks, it is over for them. Basically, it's over.
Yeah, and it's audience capture. It's not as top down as the sort of kind of COVID stuff was. More decentralized, bottom up, externally influenced rather than controlled.
Yep.
But it's a phenomenon you have to worry about. And part of I've talked about this with other people. You see some random influencer come out of nowhere, and suddenly they're getting huge numbers of likes on Twitter, and you're like, who is? I've never seen this. Who is this guy? And oh, look, they're saying the same thing that like I've been fighting against or whatever for a while, and then it's just Ian Carroll is actually the person I'm thinking of, where it's like Ian Carroll came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden like Ian Carroll's everywhere saying conspiracy theories about Jews and getting huge likes for it. Now you can either believe that there's just this massive latent audience of anti-Semites in the United States, even though the polling doesn't suggest that audience really exists or is really active, or you can think that this is somehow inauthentic, right? It doesn't. I don't know exactly in which way it's inauthentic, who's responsible for the inauthenticity. I'd bet on it not being Carroll himself, but something about this is inauthentic. Like it's just he this guy is not saying anything interesting. He's not saying anything new, and he's just this new prominent character. Speculating about Jews and Epstein or whatever.
That brings me to something I really wanted to ask you, and maybe this is childish, I don't know, but who do you find to be the most objectionable of the noticers, of the people that spend 90% of their posts talking about the Jews? Who do you find to be the most like, what is wrong with this person? This person needs something in their life. They need something to do. They need God. They need something besides posting about Jews on the internet all day.
I think Jake is actually a pretty big offender here. First of all, like a few days ago, he's like doing the thing where he like DM'd me Jew, like just did that. I'm like, you are a serious major professional athlete. Like, what are you doing acting like a 18-year-old troll on Twitter, just DMing people in religious insults like that way? Like, what are you doing? Like, this is so disappointing because you were a serious fighter. You should be you have respect of the broader public. Like you didn't need to do this. There's nothing you're getting out of it other than just being a dickhead and I guess building like a third world fan base. But it's embarrassing from him. I guess it's not. Candace I think is smarter, so it's more disappointing in that regard. Nick is a psychopath, like just a genuine like psychopath bad person. So pick among the three. Candace is smart enough to know better. Nick's just a bad guy, and Jake's the most disappointing because it's like there's no need for this. Like I feel sorry for Jake more than anything because I'm like Jake clearly, he's clearly been through a lot, and I can't help but feel sorry for the guy. Weirdly enough,
I've debated him many times. I've met him a few times. And I think the guy, more than anybody, that the phenomenon you were talking about earlier, the audience capture, I think he is just wrapped up by the algorithm and the clicks and all that. Like, if he weren't getting those clicks, he would not be doing this. This is a guy that his whole life has been about fighting, and now he can't physically fight anybody, but he's found that the crowd wants him to fight the Jews, that he's applauded. And so this is the only way he can continue as a gladiator. That is it for Dick.
And that's a big trap. I think that this is something everybody needs to get a handle on. And it's also I've talked about this randomly, where giving younger people a platform of this size, which is something that's often happened, like you have some younger pretty girl who says something interesting once, and it's suddenly like is overwhelmed by followers, or some young guy like. Just generally, people in their early 20s having a platform of this size thrust upon them is not a blessing. It's like you're putting the person on a high wire with no net. They can easily ruin their lives. They can easily go down a rabbit hole they can't get themselves out of. That might have been what happened to Nick, honestly, right? Like that's a good example. Like he became famous way too young. There's no reason you need, as a young man, to be famous at 20 for things you're saying on the internet. There's nothing good that's going to come of that. You're just not going to be saying you're not going to be well developed enough intellectually and as a mature person to be responsible with that. Like, I'm really glad that I didn't start doing this until I was like almost 30 years old.
Will, you want to know something funny?
Yeah.
Don't Tase Me Bro happened. I was 21 years old, and I listened to my parents. I literally had a message from God, and I wasn't a religious person at all, but I had like a message from God. I listened to all the wise counsel that I got, and I didn't go bananas in the media, which I could have. I was invited to Hollywood award shows. I was invited to like major like entertainment talk shows. I only did the Today Show once. And like, I've looked back on that moment many times, and I thanked God that I didn't just go bananas with media, because I know for a fact I would have been a ruined man. I wouldn't have even been a man. I would have been a man child for the rest of my life and not developed properly. So what you said, because you haven't gone through it that way, but what you said is exactly right. Like, these people getting fame in their 20s because they said something interesting on the internet one time, and now they have a plot. Well, what do you think about everything in the world? Undeveloped 20-year-old that doesn't have any life experience.
And you can easily get led astray into like things that change, that like permanently cement what your career is going to be. Like, that happened to Nick. That's a good example, right? Like, by 21, Nick was known for saying things about Jews. That was like his thing. And it's like, how do you ruin and permanently foreclose any number of opportunities in your life? You do something like that as a 21-year-old, all of a sudden Google will know that forever. You have to wonder if Nick didn't have this platform thrust upon him at such a young age. Would this have been? I mean, maybe it would have. Maybe he was just a psychopath and always going to be one. But like, maybe not. I don't know. It's hard to say.
That's so generous, Will.
So I have a theory that Nick Fuentes is a product of the left, and he may not even realize it, right? But 30 or 40 years ago, nobody that looked or acted like Nick would have been given any type of fucking possible voice the way he does. But like, we've reached a stage where we kind of like almost promote weakness. Like, look at this guy. He's a tiny little bastard, and he's saying whatever he wants, and that's great. Like, back in the day, it's like, shut the fuck up, boy. Like, keep your fucking mouth quiet and go back in the fucking corner, because the problem is, like, we as a society, we've like suspended natural selection, like the natural selection of how things are supposed to go. Like, you don't need to be smart. You don't even need to be good looking. You don't even really need to be right. You just need to be unique enough that the algorithm catches you.
Yeah, sufficiently outrageous, right? Outrageous.
Yes.
Sufficiently outrageous.
And to watch what looks to be like a lollipop wearing a sports jacket, talk about Jews and say the N-word and stuff like that. That is Nick Fuentes. I think that's just algorithm fed, and I think you had it right. They picked him out of no place. I have yet to see him, like, he repeats stats and everything like that, but I've yet to see him actually use logic to a great degree. So I don't watch him much though because of that. But it's one of those things. Like, he's a product of the media and the motivation to basically promote everything that's weak, right?
Well, I mean, he's certainly at this point in a very strange box where he's effectively made himself an adjunct of the Democrat Party. That's the other thing. He's the other thing about this totalizing, his politics has become kind of single factor politics, right? Everything is downstream of, in his view, like Jews being bad, and our politics need to be, our American policy should just be much more hostile to Jews in Israel.
Right.
If you're going to get there, like, that's a fundamentally left-wing perspective. You're going to end up being pulled and anchored more and more to the left, away from Trump, away from standard issue republicanism, like, to the point that he endorsed Kamala, basically, or maybe he said he didn't, but he effectively, he was like, I'm not voting for Trump. Trump's too Zionist, and now he's bragging about, see, Trump is super pro-Israel. Like, okay, right. But when you actually look at whatever this right-wing theory was about why Jews were to blame for the world's ills, the diagnosis of what the world's ills were things like open borders and, all the standard issue conservative policy proposals that Trump, while being very pro-Israel, is also doing more than anybody in history to solve, right? We've zeroed out illegal border crossings. We just got the biggest increase in funding for immigration control and restriction and enforcement in our nation's history. We increased the size of the budget of ICE by 20 times, something like that. That's a crazy number. They're literally throwing out $50,000 signing bonuses to ICE agents right now because they have so much money they don't know what to do with it.
Wow.
Six-figure salary, $50,000 bonus. Like, go work for ICE and find illegal aliens. That's what the government wants you to do.
What's the website to apply to that again?
It's the ice.gov. Probably ice.gov/careers. You see if that's it? ice.gov/careers. Yep, that's it. Boom.
If you're watching this right now and you want to get rid of illegals, there's a job for you.
Seriously, I'm not even joking. You should go.
I'm not joking either. That's fucking
if you're a young man just out of college looking for a job, like looking for some, I'm sure it'll be interesting. I'm sure it'll be adventurous. Like go and it'll compensate you. Well, yeah, go work for ICE. But it's like people, and I guess my point is that all these people forgot about the underlying reason why they were anti-Semitic. Right? Like, the reason they found themselves in anti-Semitic policies was because of this mistaken diagnosis that they thought Jews were responsible for our lack of immigration enforcement and our open borders, and like that Israel was somehow behind that all too. And so as a result of now that they've misdiagnosed the problem, they refuse to admit that they misdiagnosed the problem, and they're sticking with their original hostility to Jews, even as the politicians who are pro-Israel and pro-Jewish are accomplishing the policy goals that they originally shared.
That's the thing that gets me. Like, Jews will not replace us. This is what they were screaming about, in Charlottesville, that the Jews are for open borders. And now Trump closed the border. He's ramping up deportations more than anybody else. And we have Nick Fuentes complaining about Stephen Miller. Like, what has Stephen Miller done that you would complain about him simply because he's
like the most loyal soldier in the army? Like, he's the guy on immigration enforcement. And like, there's this obvious natural, I see it as like American whites and American Jews have this obvious natural alliance against the forces of barbarism that are, like it's and it manifests itself in any number of ways, right? Like the anti-American factions are also the anti-Semitic factions. Everybody, there's this natural alignment of interests on the American right. And it's these people who are frustrated by it because they're completely swallowed up by the mind virus.
Exactly right. A friend of mine, Louis Shanker, he calls them Amalekites, saying that at this point, because if you look at it politically, what we just laid out, like why should Fuentes or any of these dissidents be upset with Stephen Miller of all people, upset with Trump, delivering the things that they started their careers talking about? But there's just this spiritual corrosion. These people just literally hate Jews to the point that they have a spiritual blindness, and this is a negative force that is piloting them, and that is controlling their words and their actions. And honestly, it's the only thing that makes any sense.
There's also the rooting for their take dynamic. It's not merely that they want their policy goals achieved. They want to be right about how to achieve them. They want to be right about the underlying causes. This phenomenon really showed up in Iran, right? Like, think about the Iran strikes. I was deferential on the Iran strikes, where I really took the position publicly, and I still stick with this, that I was like, if Trump doesn't think it's a good idea, I think he's probably right. If Trump goes forward, I assume that he has the information necessary to say that it's the right call, right? And he went forward, and he did it, and the war was over in 48 hours, right? A war that might look like it might have gone on for much longer was over in 48 hours. Everybody said if we strike Iran's nuclear facilities, World War III, right? And in fact, started kind of rooting for that. You could sense it. Like, they were rooting for things to get worse because they had made a prediction beforehand that if we did strike, things would be worse. They were trying to vindicate. They were focused almost more on vindicating their take than they were on the substantive positive outcome for Americans and for the Middle East. And I think there's a real tendency, and it's something. It's not just like whatever the anti-Zionist faction that has this problem. Everybody can get kind of tied in wanting to see their own take vindicated, and it's like a bias we all should be trying to avoid.
That happened with a couple of people that I had spent a good amount of time talking with. And they were so driven to the idea that we're about to be in World War III, that Trump is owned. And I'm saying the whole time, we are not about to be in some 20-year war. It's not going to happen. There's no way.
Yeah.
And the fact that they were wrong just destroyed them. It destroyed them to the point that they started acting out in the nastiest of ways. They could not handle publicly being wrong, and like it just absolutely drove them towards the worst of directions. It's been crazy to watch.
Yeah, it's a really weird dynamic because it should be seen like now that we can look back on it with, you know, whatever, a month's 6 weeks distance, I guess. This was what, 6 weeks ago, roughly, I think. Not long, right? We were at war with Iran 6 weeks ago. It's just totally out of the news cycle. Everybody's forgetting about it. The only thing now, people are back to whining about Gazan civilians or something silly. Anyway, so the Iran thing happened 6 weeks ago, and I feel like people kind of fritzed out a little bit. I think that's a good description what you were talking about. I think that's what you had, this immediate pivot to Epstein stuff after that happened, and it's like somehow the anti-Zionist people needed to be right about something vis-a-vis Israel or Jews. They needed to be right about something, so they moved. So like Tucker, after making these unbelievably incorrect predictions about the consequences of an American strike in Iran, didn't just lean in and say, "Oops, I'm glad I was wrong." You know, like thankfully I was wrong about that. How about that? Just immediately leaned into like crazy Epstein stuff. There's a weird thing happening. I think honestly, it's like from a position of, I think we're maybe too spoiled right now as a right-wing movement. Things are going too well.
Yeah.
Like things really are going too well. I was actually thinking about that today. Like, what am I going to tweet about? Like, everything's fine. You know, immigration's being handled. Civil rights division's doing amazing things on, you know, we're suing Harvard. We're telling them they're going to lose all their money. We just extracted $200 million from Colombia. We're getting every judge we want. We're winning on trade. Like we got this massive EU trade deal. We're winning on the border. Where are we not winning? And we're winning on foreign policy too. Like here's the funny thing. It was totally predictable that this is exactly what would happen on foreign policy, that we would strike and the war would end really quickly, or that it wouldn't go, because Trump has done this before. This is not the first time Trump has struck a country in the Middle East. He struck Syria. He struck ISIS. None of these led to like prolonged wars. They were just either one-shot things, or they were total wars of destruction against a much weaker enemy that couldn't do anything about it. Yeah, I mean, it's like it's this weird, and you're seeing the rise of this weird like pacifism, I guess would be the way to put it. Like this is like the Dave Smith kind of kooky libertarian view. Like it's a weird. I've coined a term this morning because I thought it was funny, but I don't know. Maybe I'll float it with you guys, and you guys can tell me what you think. Islamopacifism, like it's a sort of
word,
right? Because as a play on Islamo's fascism from back in the day, but it's sort of like this policy idea that basically treats Muslims like children and says that because they're children, we can never hold them to any sort of standard. We, on the other hand, are never allowed to respond to any. There's no legitimate self-defense against Islamic aggression.
Right.
Like the only legitimate thing is to accede to the demands of Islamists. And I'm just like but it's hard to say. I mean, that feels uncharitable, but like when I watch Dave Smith, like I never get a sense of. And Bassem Youssef had the same thing where he was asked like, what should Israel have done in response to October 7th? And the answer is not this. It's like, well, but you won't give an affirmative defense. So really what you're saying is there was no legitimate self-defense in response.
They're just good little children, Will. They're holy children. Don't you leave them alone. You don't talk bad about them. You don't do anything. If this is how Europe got conquered. This is how Europe got conquered.
Patronizing. And this is another libertarian blind spot. That there is a way. I mean, this comes from all the way from Ron Paul, and Ron Paul is right about a lot of things. I like Ron Paul. I gave him a lot of money.
A lot of things.
But it comes from this old school libertarian stuff that's like everything is blowback, right? Everything that happens in the Middle East is ultimately our fault. It's ultimately a response to our mistaken foreign policy actions, our failure to understand what's happening, right? Everything that happens is that. And that's very patronizing, and people understand it's very patronizing of Muslims. It's very patronizing of the Islamic world, because what it suggests is that they don't have any independent ideas or agenda of their own. Yeah. That they're children they're like NPCs. They're literally like NPCs there to be acted upon by the actual player, the United States. Whereas The sophisticated view says, no. These people have these are civilizations that have been around for a long time. These ideas have existed for thousands of years. They have their own agenda, worldview, foreign policy goals that they're trying to accomplish in their own way. Those goals are going to be in conflict with ours. We shouldn't just accede to what they want when those goals are in conflict. That doesn't necessarily make sense at all. But rather than assume that literally everything that's happening in the Middle East is just our fault, no, assume that, listen to what the people in ISIS are saying. They have a vision that they're trying to, they have a world state that they're trying to achieve, independent of what we do. Like, they want a caliphate. They don't have a caliphate. They want a caliphate. They're going to use military force to accomplish that if they can. So should we stop that? If we should stop that, where should we stop it? How? But the idea that they don't just want a caliphate because we were mean.
Right. Exactly
right. Will, you're showing the blind spots, and I hope this gets picked up and people watch it, because this is the issues people are not seeing. Very, very on point. I'm literally getting texts right now. This is the best show that we've ever done, Alan. People are saying, and big credit to Will. Something else I wanted to get into that I think not enough people understand, which you hit on it already, just the fact that so brilliant. How many billion Muslims? 2 billion Muslims in the world?
Yeah, 2 billion.
So right. With 2 billion Muslims plus, bot farms or whatever else, they can make any message they want go viral. And they are using this power to do crazy things. Like, there was a guy in an airport that grabbed a baby and just grabbed a 2-year-old and body slammed him. And all at the same time, Adam E. Media, Syrian Girl, Suleiman Ahmed, they all said this is a Jew just grabbing a random child because he's Iranian and killing him. And this is what Jews do. And this went super viral. And before anybody did any sort of checking, this is the story. Meanwhile, the guy is a Eastern European Christian. They found a picture of him wearing his cross. But he's a Jew. That's the story. He's a Jew just randomly killing a baby.
Yeah. I mean, it's reflexive. And, if you can't win a real war, win a PR war, right? Like, that's
Absolutely.
The substantive problem.
Well, a lot of wars are PR wars nowadays.
That's true.
I mean, when you look at it, that's where it's fought. I mean, for goodness sake, they were carting over celebrities to make Zelensky look like.
Yeah, I mean, same thing Ukraine's trying to do, right? Ukraine was having trouble winning the real war. They're trying to win a PR war. I mean, it is the Palestinian strategy, right? Like, that is the funny, one of the reasons, like, if people really wanted to help the Palestinians, really, really did want to help, the first thing they would be much more helpful to them by not caring. And it's a weird thing. It's a paradox, but it's true, right? It's because you care that the Palestinians have chosen the strategy of sacrificing their people in this dramatic fashion. If you didn't care, they wouldn't choose this strategy, but you do.
Right.
So they do. Like, if the world were actually solid on the question of, like, no, you built your military fortifications under your civilian population. The deaths of your civilians are the fault of the people who did that. That's a war crime, right? Right. So, and basically being like, we're not, if everybody were just indifferent, and they're like, oh, I guess Israel's going to take over your country now. Oh, well, maybe you should consider making peace. Mm-hmm. Like, things will get, basically, if the attitude of the international community was just a unified voice to the Palestinians of, like, you should really make a peace deal because the next one's going to be worse. And nothing's going to change about our attitude. Like, we don't care what you do. We don't care about your PR. We don't care. Like, nothing's going to change until then. They'd make a peace deal, and the hostages would be home, and they'd be far better off. But it's toxic empathy in the sense that the broader empathy of the world is not helping the Palestinian cause. It's not helping the Palestinian people. Maybe it's helping the Palestinian cause in the sense that it's keeping alive a possible victory condition for Hamas, but it's not helping the Palestinian people.
Another banger point: toxic empathy. Yeah. Oh, this is incredible. Alan, go ahead.
The toxic empathy thing, them pushing that through the universities and everything like that. That's where a lot of the younger people are grasping this, the alliance basically with what they see as Palestine, Gaza, anti-Zionism, those type of things. Like, it's very strange to me how anybody is even concerned with what's going on over there. Like, we are $37 trillion in debt, and young people are like, send them more of our money. Like it just goes to show that these universities are not preparing them for how this would actually affect them. I mean, I always point to the Gays for Palestine being one of the most like that at one point in time that had like 1 million followers.
Yeah, talk about something totally self-defeating, right? Totally,
it's insane. Yeah. I mean, if we didn't care about you guys, we'd actually send you guys over there. Like we would like if we wanted to do away with them, we could give them tickets and it would be over.
See how it goes for you.
Right.
Yeah.
The thing to me is, I don't know if it was always this way, but the PR, yes, the social media is making things just unbelievably crazy because people they've never seen Pallywood before. They don't understand that they gin up fake injuries and crazy stuff. But like the New York Times just had to apologize. That picture they printed, it's a malnourished baby that is starving. But no,
it was with a genetic disorder.
It was a baby with some medical condition, and that's just how it is. It's not because the baby is being starved. But if there really were a starving baby, they wouldn't need to use a fake photo like of a baby that just has a medical condition. But like that story isn't getting out there. Okay, they apologized. They used a photo. It was fake. But then they don't really correct the record and say, yeah, there are no starving babies, or we would have chosen one of those for the photo.
Yeah,
but has it always been this way, Will, where the mainstream media pushes the Palestinian lies?
It didn't used to be this way. Although, I mean, they've always been leaning a little more in that direction. There was like some great old Yarvin quote is that the reason that the Palestinians don't need anything like IPAC is because they have Princeton and the New York Times. The reason the Israelis need IPAC is because they don't have they don't have the broader set of American academic and cultural institutions supporting them. Mm-hmm. The New York Times doing that is remarkable, but then again, not that remarkable. They've been doing similar stuff the entire time. And it's a weird interest. Somebody compared it to like the Black Lives Matter hysteria, where it didn't matter how untrue or ridiculous a shooting incident was involving police from like 2015 to 2020. Like, no matter how unfair the facts, like no matter how much the facts vindicated the police officer's decision and showed it was a good shoot, like it still led to this hysteria. And finally, the only thing that finally stopped it was like body cam videos where it's just completely irrefutable that it's the cop who was in the right and the attacker who was in the wrong. We're seeing similar stuff with this. I mean, this Gaza stuff. That's not to say that there isn't some hunger in Gaza, and it's a war zone, and the difficulty of getting aid into it in a way that doesn't enrich the adversary is a real challenge that the Israelis are dealing with, along with some American nonprofit help. But like, if there were mass starvation, we would see it in more than in a photo of one kid with a muscular disorder.
Yeah.
Not only that, but is it really the responsibility? Like when you're at war with somebody, this is why I don't like soft war. If we're going to war with somebody, let's get it on. We should leave everybody else alone. Just mind our own business until somebody messes with us, and then let's get it on and end it very quickly. But this is like a little bit of a soft war. So we're going to bomb you, but we're going to make sure we bomb you in certain areas. Listen, your people and your government are doing this. We're going to try to avoid citizens, but we're not rebuilding shit. We're not using any of our, like we should not be paying to rebuild anything that we blow up because they need it blown up. And it's just a strange thing to me how this idea of soft war, where we're trying very hard to avoid this area, avoid that area, provide aid. Like, I'm sorry, but like we're at war. War should be like, we are going to beat the shit out of you until you give up as quickly as humanly possible and have it be over. And I think this idea of soft war and giving aid to, like, trying to provide aid to people inside of a war zone area like that just prolongs the misery longer.
Yeah.
Like, it just makes it go on and on and on,
It's really, and it shows it's just really difficult to conduct a war in the modern era. Like essentially the proliferation of social media, viral video has imposed new rules on Western countries. I think, part of what Israel really needed to do and still kind of needs to do is they need to do what the Americans did with Raqqa when they were fighting ISIS, which is you need to firmly establish that you're going to create a new zone where the civilians are going to live, either within a part of Gaza that you've completely controlled, and have completely cleared, or in Egypt. And then you just basically say, this is the humanitarian aid place where you guys will live until the end of the conflict. And you're not going back to Gaza City because that is an active war zone. And you have guards and you vet it. And basically any civilian come in and this is where you live and you get fed and you get medical care for the duration of the conflict. It's expensive, but you just do it. You only have to do it once because then they're in the humanitarian zone. And then you eventually you've given enough time and enough clearance for like everybody who's in Gaza City is now a terrorist, right? Everyone in Gaza City is now Hamas or Hamas affiliate. So then you can actually finally finish off the war and, you dismantle all the, blow up all the buildings, dismantle all the booby traps, destroy all the tunnels, The Israelis are so, if I have actually one deep criticism of the Israelis, it's their willingness to make strategic military sacrifices to bring hostages home. And that has prolonged the war enormously and then actually, potentially put them in a situation where they can't defeat Hamas. Because they've done stuff like we're giving up our military line that we spent a lot of time investing in to bring home some hostages. It's like, well, if you do that, then you're kind of reversing all the military gains you made, because what happens is we're back to Hamas and Hamas civilians living together in Gaza City, and we're back to square one in terms of military progress. Or maybe not square one, but you're giving up a huge amount of military progress, which is going to cost you more and more Israeli lives to have to bring back. So I don't know. I think the Israelis are definitely very vulnerable to hostage blackmail. And it's their big weakness, and it's it's the reason this war has taken so long. American conduct of this war would have been much faster and therefore better for everybody involved, right? War is hell. It's better if it's shorter.
You answered a question I wanted to ask without me even asking it, what you think should be done in Gaza. Brilliant. Your incredible analogy saying that I remember this time. Every black person in America that was shot by a cop, they were a victim, no questions. They were a hero. They were a martyr. And then you dig into it, it's like, no, they were actually like in the process of stabbing a woman. And this one shouldn't be a hero. But it's too late. That was just the environment.
Once it's in the media megaphone, once it's in the cause gets invested in it, and then that's all you hear about.
So to this point, I have a question for you from Louis Schenker. He asks, I would be interested in hearing Will speak about if he sees the socio-cultural feelings about Jews in Israel reversing course in the future. If so, how? If not, what are the implications?
Yes, I do see them. I think that a big part of it's a double phenomenon. The war in Israel has gone on for a really long time, relatively speaking. It's I think it might be the longest war in Israel's history, actually, at this point. I don't even know if 48 was longer. It's a long war, wherever that everybody's publicly obsessed over. There aren't a lot of other wars going on that are interesting. Like Ukraine-Russia has been a freeze for a long time now. So it just hasn't been newsworthy. Things are going super well for us in the United States. That's, I think, the other thing. There's just not a lot. There's not a lot to talk about or be obsessed about or stir up controversy about. Things are just going well. When this war ends and our political situation becomes more domestically focused, I think there'll be a shift. And I don't think that if the war does end, I don't think that the anti-Israel energy will be able to sustain itself especially on the right. I think it'll sustain itself on the left, but I don't think it'll sustain itself on the right. And I think that, I think that essentially Jews in the United States will find themselves, especially younger ones, drawn, if they're going to stay Jewish and within the community, then more and more drawn to the Republican Party.
Thank you. Will, this has been a phenomenal show. I gotta
so much.
say,
Yeah.
This one was special. You brought a lot of clarity to a lot of issues, and I really can't thank you enough for doing this one, Will.
Happy to do it anytime.
Thank you very much, sir. Pleasure to meet
you. For people that don't know, by the way, Will and I go back a long time. He is very generous to be doing this in the first place. Consider I have been rapacious on Twitter from time to time, not always so charitable. Will is very charitable. I really appreciate you doing this. For anybody that doesn't know, where do they find you on social media? What else do you want the people to know before you get out of here?
At Will Chamberlain on Twitter, and you can. I'm involved in 2 big projects right now. I guess that's my employment. The Article 3 project, we're fighting to get Trump's judges confirmed. We already had a very successful fight to get Trump's nominees confirmed. We fight on lawfare and legal issues all the time. And then the Edmund Burke Foundation, which runs the National Conservatism Conference, which is September 2nd to 4th in Washington, D.C. You should attend. Sign up now. You can register, I believe, at nationalconservatism.org. And you can find the conference, but you should come. It's the center of the intellectual MAGA right.
Well, this was a genius show. Thank you. Thank
you,
Al.
sir.
Absolutely.
Thank
Happy
you.
to do it.
Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it. And see you guys soon. We're out from Jewcast.